Welcome in episode 12 of Untitled Blood Bowl Podcast Projects, TBA. We are not doing any memes this week. We are going straight into business because we are getting to the end of the regular season.
Yeah, the future is forecast now, at the very least. We know what the remaining schedule is. Mostly what's left to do is just play some Blood Bowl. Figure out who's making it in, who's not for the playoffs. So,
Yeah. Each division has had two teams eliminated from contention, but there's a lot of teams fighting for the last couple spots in each division. So it's going to be a race to the finish. We got a
right.
lot of really impactful games coming up, and we're going to talk about.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams who are basically a loss away from elimination right now. So, their playoff basically has already started. They don't have to play by the same rules as the other teams that are kind of like waiting around until the playoffs actually start. And everybody's still trying to develop their teams, of course. So,
Yeah. Yep. Before we get into the Week 11 recap, let's hit some catch-up games real quick. We had a couple games. First one being the Slee Stacks and Plague of Gods. This was a draw.
yeah, it looked like a benign game. That was the note that I put there. It looked like a bunch of skinks either got crowd surfed or failed dodges or something. Some skinks exploded. They have a tendency to do that. Um, but yeah, I mean, the Lizards are a pretty durable, resilient team, and so is the Tomb Kings. Um, but the Tomb Kings aren't very good at moving the ball, and probably don't really want to go chasing skinks around the field. So,
Right. Up next, we had the Southern California Trojans, a 2-1 win over Dodge This. And this one had a pretty lengthy recap in the
yeah,
Discord channel.
yeah. Chase had a pretty good write up. I think that's pretty accurate. The Cliff Notes version of it is it's turn 16. Chase, I think, is trying to throw a pass with like a blitzer, and it's inaccurate, and so it scatters. But it ends up scattering to one of his other catchers, and that catcher catches the ball because it's got uh, nerves of steel, even though it's based by like a Blackwork at the time. It's got nerves of steel, so it's able to just catch the ball after it's scattered to him. And then he was ready to end the turn, and I was like, well, that's not actually a turnover. As long as a pass action resolves with your model having the ball in your possession, it's not a turnover, regardless of whether it like hit the ground and bounced to a model or something like that. That's a little bit of a difference in this version of the game than in previous versions of the game. Other versions were more explicit about it. It's also different than picking up the ball and failing to pick up the ball. That is explicitly labeled as a turnover, even if the model that ends up with the ball after you fail to pick it up is one of the models on your team. That doesn't matter. You failed to pick up the ball. Um, Passing is really wacky that way. And so it actually helped out Chase in this case. And so he was able to just dodge out and run into the end zone with like one go for it. And then, like almost an entire other game of Blood Bowl happened in that last turn because Nate had one turn, but it ended up being a timeout. So there was actually two turns, and Nate failed to pick up the ball, and he was basically forced into a throw teammate situation. And as soon as the goblin gets the ball, and the troll goes to throw it, the troll decides to eat the goblin, and it was like the best goblin on the team. It was a goblin that had block, and the troll was just, he was a little hungry.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it's the second Black Orc Goblin Lyman eaten by a troll on the last tournament game this season.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, when you've had a game with Bomber like Nate had earlier in the season, I think
yeah.
eventually it's going to come back. The ones will hit.
Yep. Yeah, and Bomber was from what Chase was saying, Bomber was pretty pathetic in that game. He knocked down like 11 out of 12 people or something like that, which is kind of we've seen better performances from Bomber this season, honestly. So,
Very true. Yeah, that's our only catch-up games. Pretty
uh,
much everything's back to schedule for the most part. So We're actually probably gonna have the inverse problem going on soon, where like a lot of games are gonna get super compressed. So it's this 2 weeks, last 2 weeks of the schedule being out
Yeah,
simultaneously.
right. I could see our cast next week just being us recapping games, just because there's a chance that a bunch of them get blasted through this next weekend. So
That brings us into our Week 11 recap. WNSN Division, first game up, Halfling Justice over the Jolly Rotters, 2-1. Uh, Champion Undead put a lot of casualties up, but just not able to peel off enough people. And Griff did Griff things, it seemed.
yeah, this was actually I think Wayne was very close to losing this game, and especially from his report after the fact. Um, the Rotters took down a tree, which is pretty good because that makes it really hard to protect the ball.
Mhm.
Um, and uh, the Rotters, I think, mostly just kind of scored. They just kind of pushed their way down the field and scored, um, kind of bulldozing their way through the Halfling team. And then when they went to kick off for like the one or two turns that remained in the half, Sweltering Heat gets rolled. And so going into the second half, Griff gets hit with the Sweltering Heat. So Griff cannot participate in Wayne's offensive drive. The Rotters don't lose anybody important, from what I understand. They still had like both mummies and some ghouls and whites and stuff like that. And so he actually also gets a blitz on that kickoff. So Wayne is down players, down Griff, down a tree man. The ball is swarmed with undead to start with at the beginning of the half, but he's able to just cage up with halflings, protect the ball, and then uh, play it pretty safe to get down the field and score. Griff comes back in. I'm not sure who leaves at this point for both teams, but at this point, Griff is the best player on the field, and the undead lost presumably some people to sweltering heat, and so Griff was able to go knock over whoever was after the ball, take it, and then go score and win the game 2-1. And so, I mean, you take Griff to win the game with him a lot of times, and even if he's like missing a drive, he can still come in and win a game. So
Yep. Sounds about right. Griff will often be the best player on the field in any given game. Next, we had the Might of Asgard and the Righteous Brimstones. This is my game. This was a draw, 1-1. It was, I think, kind of a tale of two halves, a little bit, where I received the kickoff and put the Death Roller in because I wanted the Death Roller to
get some damage.
get some damage, hopefully, kind of just wreak havoc, tie up a bunch of things. And it went similarly to the Undead game. It's a little bit. We got a casualty on the first hit on the line. So it felt pretty good starting off. I was down like one or two players because he had bought some beer boars. So our team values were actually even going in. Um, that put in a position where like I got a casualty on the first turn. His first turn, he gets a casualty with the Yeti. Yeti went a little crazy this game. I think he got like three. I think all the casualties that he got in the game were from the Yeti. Took three doors out for the next game. Um, and the Death Roller got knocked out either turn two or three on a uphill block from the Elf Runner. Um, so I was down players kind of in this weird spot where the ball was starting to get swarmed. He had the Yeti threatening the ball. So I just had to kind of go for just make a run for it up the sideline with the runner to get to his backfield. And I was like, okay, I can get to a position where I'm not getting frenzied. He had a Valkyrie in the backfield that went and like knocked the ball out, but eventually I'm able to recover the ball and score right before the half. The second half, I was down to, I think I lined up with 8 players against his full 11. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to hopefully get some damage here. Um, Earlier in the game, you had to apothecary his Valkyrie from a badly hurt to keep it in the game because like we're very much in a position where this is like a must-win game or like can't lose. You just can't lose this game. So he apothecaried a badly hurt to keep it in the game, and it ends up getting killed. And he does score to tie it, and then the final offensive drive, I am setting up with 8 versus 11, and I'm like, okay, I have a couple turns to try to score, get the ball down. He's able to knock the ball out and get it with the Valkyrie. I'm then able to like knock the Valkyrie down and actually catch it. And he has to go with the Yeti. The Yeti was a little angry this game, but it finally passed it, and then he runs the Yeti over, declared a blitz, steps on the ball, and picks the ball up on a 6, which had to be a 6 because of 2 tackle zones on it. Decides not to go through with the blitz, and basically the last turn of the game is me angling to try to knock the ball out. My blitz fails um, to knock it out. The next hit does, but the ball bounces in the one spot. It scatters to the one spot where I couldn't pick it up and score. So it ended up being a draw. Whereas, like, if there had been any extra turn, like a timeout or something, would have just like
Right.
kind of sealed it up.
Off by a square.
Yeah, literally any other spot that it bounced would have been able to get it with like rushes. But
Yeah. I
um,
mean, it sounds like both teams kind of left it on the pitch, right? Like,
yeah, very much. It
actually,
was yeah, lots of
it was like lots of debilitating injuries for both teams.
yeah. We're definitely hurting. I put a little more hurt because my players will come back next week.
Yeah. And hit home.
Yeah, so definitely an interesting game. But that is that is what I will say about it. As we go on to the next game, Grey Pox Bangs, the Imperial City Retainers. It was a 1-0 win for Joel. I watched a bit of this game in the first half, and it was a very weird game. Like Skaven versus Skaven, I think we had talked about it. Like it could just be a foot race where it's like like a 4-3 or like a 3-2.
But this
Um,
ended up being a 1-0.
yeah,
The opposite.
that's so. From what I saw, um, Fred kicked off the first half to Joel. Joel does things on the first turn, goes to pick up the ball with the gutter runner, fails to pick it up. One of Fred's gutter runners, Fred gets his turn, he goes, does some stuff, goes to pick up the ball with his gutter runner, fails to pick it up. And it was just that going back and forth, failing to pick up for the first half. I don't think the ball crossed midfield until turn 7. And yeah, it was a game where I don't think either player's dice were exceptionally hot.
Yeah. Yeah, Fred mentioned to me that he had a couple of points where he just picks up the ball, he just puts it in the end zone.
Mhm.
And so I don't think you could be too mad about how you play if you just constantly roll ones on when you need to score. I don't fault anybody for going for a touchdown and just failing the roll. Right. You're gonna have to you win Blood Bowl games by trying to score touchdowns. So, you gotta go for it at some point. And the dice they're gonna be against you in some games.
Yep. Next, we got the Rotten Peaches and the V Stars. It was a 2-1 win for the Amazons in an extremely balanced game when you at look at the box score. Each team with 3 casualties, 3 injuries, 1 death. It was
Yeah.
like down to like the only difference in star player points acquired here was that 1 touchdown. But other than that, they were like identical.
Yeah, it looked like the Amazons were on the wrong side of the Armor 8 divide at the beginning of the game, but then that caught up to the Wood Elves in the second half. From what I heard about from Mike recounting afterwards, and a little bit from John as well, plus they're right up in the Discord, it's like this game was like really, really close and really came down to just a couple of die rolls, one way or another. There was apparently a turn where one of the war dancers got hit with like 11 dice worth of block dice and didn't even get put on the ground. That's the type of thing where uh, you do your best to take down a block dodger and it just doesn't work. I think this loss really hurts Mike's chances for the playoffs because at this point he has no losses to give. He has to win out from here to make it in, and he still needs like a little bit of help. So
Up next, we got Teal Terror Book of Grudges, 1-0 win for Castors. Do you have any insight?
yeah,
Uh,
Barbie mentioned that she does a lot in a lot of these games that she loses like 1-0. She does a pretty good job of like hounding the ball, and that's why like the opponent doesn't like necessarily score. But once again, I still don't think she's like really quite figured out how to uh, not just not make the opponent score, but take the ball away with elves and then run the other direction with it. I think she needs like a lot of help on her offensive schemes, and I don't think dark elves do newer players like her really any favors. Models like the runner is actually kind of a trap piece because you see the dump off skill and you're like, I'll just use dump off. But dump off, if you're not using it correctly, is really, really bad. And the runner isn't necessarily good at throwing the ball because it's only passing three up.
mm,
Um, so that piece takes a little bit of skill to use. Dark elves are really good at um, like standing and banging with other teams, just getting in a straight up scrum with it, just because their distribution of skills and armor are so good. Um, so I keep using all of these. Uh, I'm using a bunch of foreshadowing for my game right up once we get there. For anybody who can't tell what's happening with my recaps of other people's games. So
all right, last one for this division this week was Return to Monkey and Of Salesman. Uh,
this was another game that left it all on the pitch. It looked
yeah,
like.
yeah. The bloody bouts. I think outside of the game I had with Austin, this is the most casualties, like combined casualties between two teams this week. Looks like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like
So,
12 or something.
yeah, 12 casualties between both teams.
Right.
It's just a bloody. We were expecting that. Like my note
It's not
last
even.
week.
It wasn't even just stunties, right? It
Yeah,
was like ogres and black orcs were taking hits.
yeah. Our my write up notes last week were just bash, 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 and I just kept that note for this week because that's basically what happened. Uh,
I think both teams would actually have a hard time stopping the other one from scoring, right? Because if you get to dictate the flow of the drive, then you can cage up, play it safe, move down the field, and you can just keep their brawn away from you
mhm,
because you get to dictate the way the drive goes.
yeah.
And then, so I think both teams actually have a hard time keeping the other one from scoring, despite the strength disadvantage for the Blackworks. The good thing about the Blackworks is that they have grab, which actually negates one of the strengths of Noblars.
Mhm,
Um, and so you don't have to like you can't just do stuff like put a Noblar on a sideline and shut down that route because the Black Orc could then go surf it.
mhm,
Right. That's one of the things about Noblars that make them so good at defense is that when your opponent blitzes them, you get to pick where they sidestep to. So even a Noblar body laying on the ground just in the way can be annoying for players to like move around and navigate around. So Black Orcs being able to put that avenue off is really powerful. And then the ogres just have a strength advantage.
mhm.
And so if you put three black orcs on the line, the ogres knock them all down, start fouling or pinning them with noblars and stuff like that. Then you have to like try to find a way to defend with your other three black orcs against three ogres, and once again you've got a strength mismatch. So it's an interesting matchup from a game theory perspective. So I wish I could have seen this one in person because I bet this is one of those games where both players probably learned really valuable lessons
Mhm.
because this is a potential playoff matchup of some sort, right?
Yeah.
At this point, could be deeper in the playoff ladder, but this is a potential playoff matchup again. I think both players would want to know like where things went wrong in the game or what they could do to actually win it.
Yeah. Also, a huge advantage there is being able to get this game so close to the playoffs, whereas like you have a good idea of how both your teams are developed. Like if you play this game week one, you might
Teams are
not
gonna look,
have a
yeah,
good
teams are
like
gonna look
measure.
completely different at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's it for Dead Man's Hand. Snake Eyes Division. We got Electric City Maulers 1-0 over Dodge This.
It looked like a really slow, really grindy game. Not a whole lot of star player points scored, so it's kind of difficult to tell what the story of the game was. And it might be one of those where like there were a bunch of KOs on one side, and tour play doesn't tell you that, right? There's no
Mhm.
way to know that. I didn't get a chance. This one was played in the store, but I didn't get a chance to actually see any of it because it was on like this past weekend. As you well know, this last weekend was kind of mayhem. So
Yeah, yeah. Great Tree Good Boys and Southern California Trojans. We're still waiting on that one. So we'll skip it for now. Go on to Gnarly Oaks with a 2-0 win over No.
yeah, looking at the tour play feed, there's like a ton of fouls that were thrown in this game.
Mhm.
But I think what ultimately happened is that Morales's dice were really, really cold. And he just ran into the brick wall that is the Gnarly Oaks defense full steam. He was like knocking a tree down and slapping around when I got to peek like at this game like a couple of times. Um, but that wasn't like enough to take it off the board.
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah, I think he kind of got outrolled there, but it wasn't like his team got punished, right? He didn't take like a bunch of casualties or whatever. It was just, you know, sometimes Blood Bowl games go that way where a couple of bad rolls, you cough up the ball, give it the opponent, and there's nothing you can do to really get it back. So
Yep. Yep. All right. Up next, we got your recap: Zero Luck Chucks and Slaughterhouse 11.
yeah, I'm gonna take exception with Coop's team name because of the false advertising implied in it. Uh, he was not zero luck for that game. I'll tell you that much. He had enough money from Morg, which I was anticipating that I would have a chance to actually take Morg off the pitch in that game. But what Coop did with Morg is that he would blitz with Morg and then go hide it behind elves. He never wanted a chance for my Bloodspawn to actually get like an alpha strike on him. And so I think during the course of the game, Morg hit the Bloodspawn one time, and the Bloodspawn hit Morg one time. Because otherwise, we would just find a softer target to go send the piece after, and then protect it behind other pieces because we didn't want the scenario where one just gets to hit the other one first cleanly. Um, and I do think Morg cost me the game because with him on the table, I just couldn't straight up believe the Dark Elves strength wise, right? I can't just go mindlessly base a 4 strength dude into a 3 strength dude and force him to dodge away, right? Um, I have to like be cognizant of where Morg is going to go the whole game, and I have to try to like put pieces in Morg's way that I'm okay with if they get killed. And Morg KO'd 2 people during the course of the game. And I think without Morg, I don't think Coop would have really done like a ton of damage to my team. The one casualty that Coop got was just like a random high roll on a Bloodseeker where he just like 10 into 10 took a Bloodseeker off the pitch. But on the flip side of that, I couldn't get any damage on Coop's team at all. It was infuriating because the math on it, like if you have a 4 strength piece with block hitting a blodger and your piece has frenzy, and you get the full 4 dice to hit somebody, you actually have like a 51% chance or so to knock over a blodger
Mhm.
with 4 dice. And so that's basically a coin flip. And I don't know how many coin flips I lost in that game. It was quite a bit. His team was just standing. Like I would take a turn of blocks. I think there was at least two. There might have been a third turn where I had like 4, 5, or 6 blocks, and I did not put an elf on the ground at all in the game. And so uh, I did manage to get two casualties in the game, and I got a couple of KOs in there. But I just couldn't hurt the elves. And so uh, he never really had like a game breaking turnover due to the lack of his rerolls. He actually went to do something with the ball on the first drive. Like one of his very first interactions with the ball was like rolling a one or something like that. But he had gotten a brilliant coaching reroll from the kickoff that he used. And sure enough, he with that reroll, he was able to keep moving the ball, and he just didn't cough it up. And so I think the game was really interesting. I just hated the outcome of it because from like an actual like game wise, it was not clear who was going to win this game for many portions of it. And I think the role that was the most important that didn't go my way was actually on the back of like one of the best plays I've made all season, and that was a turn where he had a relatively dud of a turn, and it was like the first one of those that he had kind of had in the game. He wasn't like punishing my team as far as blocks were going. Morg was relatively soft-handed, um, and he had a turn where he did not knock. I think he knocked one of my pieces over. Despite the fact that I had done that like two or three times to him during the course of the game, this finally happened to me. So I had a turn where I got like six blocks on
Mm.
elves. And so it ended up with I started with the blood spawn who failed to knock over the elf that was in front of him, um, but it resulted in two pushes into the pile where Coop had like stolen the ball and was like making a screen with. And that double push actually let me push an elf to the sideline, and then I get to throw another hit into that pile because that double push also freed up like an important assist.
Mm.
So I get to throw a hit into that pile, and that's a chain push, and that pushes his ball carrier next to the sideline and next to the elf that's against the sideline, and then there's another corpse in the way, and I'm able to bring a bloodseeker in and hit the elf that's like at the front of the screen, and that lets me push that elf into the ball carrier, surf the ball carrier, frenzy that dude next to the sideline, then frenzy him into the crowd. And so I crowd surf two people with one uh, blitz. But the ball, instead of going across midfield or back towards his side, it comes towards my end zone and like lands right in front of three of his elves that have been locked in like combat with a bloodseeker the whole time. So I'm able to like run a corn go over there. I have to use my last reroll to pick up the ball, I believe, and I run it towards as best as I can. I try to run it towards where my pieces are. Um, and for the record, those I crowd surfed two players, and they were both went to the reserve box, so neither of them were even like KO'd from that. It was just that was like every time an elf hit the ground, it was like I rolled anywhere from like a snake eyes to like a six, and that was it.
Mhm.
Um, and so uh, I have just like a lone corn gore, and he like makes his dodges, runs over there, knocks it over, recovers the ball, no problem, gets like a soft screen in place, and then that's basically the ball game there. And time runs out, and I think I have like one turn after that, and I get a feel better casualty on the very last turn. But it was one of those where like I needed that casualty earlier in the game,
Yeah.
just because if I'm playing against 10 elves, six of which are blodgers, and also morgue the whole half, like you need something to come off the pitch. Otherwise, morgue on an elf team is like crazy because he's just your dedicated blitzer.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a frustrating loss there, for sure. But it was like a good game. I just like I couldn't catch the break. I kept waiting for the no rerolls to actually matter. I did get through this game with no double skulls. Um, But when I was rolling three or more double skulls in games, I was winning those games. The This game with no double skulls, I lost. So I don't know. Go figure. That's Blood Bowl.
Yeah. All right. Up next, the Sleek Stacks Bad Moon Rising. Waiting on that result. So we got one more game in this division. Plague of Gods and the Blood Moon Gang. It was a 2-1 win for Tomb Kings.
Yeah, and it looked like the Tomb Kings got busy in that game.
Yeah, 5 casualties, kind of piling it on.
Yeah,
You know, it's when
both
you're
trolls were hurt at some point in the game. So I
yeah
don't know what you're supposed to do with goblins with no trolls against mummies.
yeah when your team is really bad at like picking up the ball and scoring, your best option is just to make it so your opponent is unable to pick up the ball because they have no players.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
seemed to kind of be the route that they were going for there. Interdivisional game this week, we got the ROUS and GG's of Electricity was a tie 2-2.
Yeah, though, did you get to see any of this game? Because it was played in the store during work hours.
I did not get to see any of
We
it.
actually, it was being played when we were recording last week, and
That's true. We did allude
um,
to it slightly.
yeah, we made a couple allusions to it. And at the time, what had happened was the first drive was utter disaster for Chris. He had like four people on the pitch. It was basically the nightmare scenario when you're playing Blood Bowl, where you can't do anything to stop your opponent, and your opponent can't fail to stop hurting your people. And so you're like standing somebody up and dodging away with, and they fall over, and then they get KO'd, and it was just like a nightmare scenario. But Chris had a keg, and so he got some of his people back on the turn 8 of the first half. And Chris actually got the one turn touchdown with a halfling. The ogre threw it. The halfling scattered where he needed to. The halfling only had to make like one dodge to run into the end zone. And so Chris manages to tie it up and then get players back at the start of the second half. The script gets flipped. So Chris is just like bullying Juan relentlessly on his drive, and then he puts it in for a touchdown with like a catcher pretty early on, probably because he can't necessarily keep the ball safe.
Hmm.
And so Chris is now up 2-1 in like the span of like four turns. Went from having like four people on the pitch to being like winning the game, which was a pretty good flip. And then um, Juan manages to score late in the game to tie it up. But I don't know if you saw, Juan's one turn gutter runner in that game got a strength down.
Mhm.
So you probably still keep that on the pitch. Like you keep it on the team and you just put it in for times where you need a one turn touchdown. But that player is, I don't want to say useless, but that player has taken like a big hit. So, Chris really wanted to win there, but I think a draw keeps him in the hunt. He's in better shape than Mike is because of this game. But yeah, what a game.
Yeah, it's almost inconceivable, you could say.
I
Yeah,
was gonna say you brought this up when we were chatting last week, but the divisions are currently 500.
yeah,
There's four wins for one division, four wins for the other division, and there have been three draws.
yeah. In a
Actually,
row, it
yeah,
was started out heavily favoring Dead Man's Hand. I think it was 3-1 at one point. Then it evened up at week 8, and then since then it's just been draw, draw, draw.
yeah,
So last two interdivisional for bragging rights.
yeah. If they split, if it's like one win, one loss or whatever, then that'll be funny. But
Yeah,
yeah, it was yeah. There was some talk about like whether the divisions were balanced or something like that. So, but I think it's funny to point out that I mean they're 500 against each other right now.
yeah.
So
Yep. All right, we got our before we get into our deep dive, we got our in memoriam section. It's pretty long this week. It was a pretty murderous week.
yeah.
I contributed to that somewhat. So we got Ravlox lineman for Dodge this.
Eaten by a troll.
Yes. Frigga, the Valkyrie, and Volstagg Ulfrenner for Might of Asgard. Frigga was one of the like best players in the league.
One of the most highly decorated for sure.
Yeah, 36 star player points. Um,
It's a brutal loss right before the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah. Austin's in a position where he had enough money to hire a rookie Valkyrie, but not an Elf Runner. That Elf Runner had block. So,
Takes forever to get on block,
yeah.
and they're not useful until they have block. So
Yeah.
it
Next we had Zriskill, Keenwalker, thrower for the Imperial City Retainers.
was like a rookie one.
Yeah. Yeah. Retainers just keep losing players. It feels
Yep.
that way. We had Droll Kassira, line one for the Rotten Peaches. Uh, I noted when getting this together that it seems like every time a player got a skill on the Rotten Peaches team is when they earned a nickname of some sort. And this player did not have a nickname before it met its demise.
Yeah, and this is I think it's also the second Wrestle Amazon line woman who's been killed. Yeah, it's
Uh,
a cursed
yeah.
position on that team.
Yes. Also, that game, possibly a more cursed position, a journeyman lineman for the V Stars.
Yeah.
What else getting fed into the wood chipper,
Yep.
seems. We had Thief, an Oblar for Return to Monkey. Uh, Dying, I'm sure, in some outrageous fashion.
I think it was crushed by a blackwork. So
That's about right. From the Blood Moon Gang, we lost Tigard, Smack, and what Ote.
yep, the more dead goblins.
Yeah. And then the GG's of Electric City, I guess as some if you're listening to this and you don't know the way that Chris has been naming his team, every time he plays somebody, he's letting them name a player on the team with some sort of code name. And this was the first death of one of those players that had gotten a nickname. So it was Jester, named by Joel, one of the linemen, was taken down.
Yeah, it was actually alignment with kick too. So like a pretty like a you can replace this person, but it definitely sucks to lose it, right? Like you want your kicker around, particularly for the playoffs.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's it for our week 11 recap. And now we get to do some diving.
Yeah. So this week the discussion piece is questions to ask yourself during your turn. I think this is like one of those things. You've played Hearthstone,
Mm,
right? One of the
yes.
questions you asked during Hearthstone, and it's been a while since I've played it, but I remember. Do I have lethal, right? Can I win the game from this spot? And that's like the first thing you should ask yourself if you start a game of Hearthstone. I think something similar in Blood Bowl, if you're on offense, is I mean, even if you're on defense, the question you should ask is, what do I have to do to score a touchdown on this turn, right? It's not possible from every board position. I'm not going to claim that it is possible for every board position, but um, what does it take to actually get the ball from the opponent and then put it in the end zone this turn? Or what sequence of players do I need to move using either my handoff, my pass, whatever it might be, my throw teammate, whatever. Like how do I get the ball into the end zone? I think is a really important question to ask at the start of every turn. Um, you can ask yourself, do I need to score this turn? Right? Because sometimes the correct play in Blood Bowl is to stall, but it may not be possible to stall every turn. Right. So, accompanying the question to that is like, how safe is the ball? Right. A lot of people use cages because they're safe, but is a cage actually safe against like a word answer and if the team's got rerolls? Not necessarily. Is a cage safe against like a bomb? No.
Mm.
Right. Stuff like that. Even throw teammate, right? You can do the billiard ball, throw a teammate at a cage to try to pop it open to see if you can get a blitz in there, right? So those are some questions that I ask myself. There's plenty more. I'm sure you've got some.
Yeah, especially when it comes to offense, it's like yeah, it's like where can I score from? Obviously, it's like it had the line with doors. It's like very binary. It's like
Yeah,
if I am within this many squares of the end zone, I can score here. I need to be here. Am I here? No, I can't score this turn.
right. Yeah,
And then it's like I think a lot of it for me this season has been having to plan out like the next turn. So it's like especially it came up a lot in uh, the game this week against Austin, where it was like I was having to my focus on offense. The questions I was asking myself were like, what is he going to do on the next turn, or like what can I afford to leave him? Where it's like, can I afford to leave like this block on like a blitzer or a troll slayer? I'm like, I don't want the Yeti getting to these. So that was the thing I had to kind of manage where I'm like, I need to put players in a position. It's like I don't like feeding players to somebody. It was like I had to like base the Yeti with alignment and not let him get anything else. Or when I went to score, I'm like, can a frenzy player get to me? And that was like a big consideration there. I was like, okay, I can put myself in a position where he can't frenzy, he can't blitz me with any of the frenzy people, he can't surf me, he can't get two dice on me without some string of rolls that had to go well. So that's like the kind of things I'm looking at. I think another one too is like predicting on offense. I try to predict where the blitz is going to be.
Right.
So like, where's the blitz? Where is he blitzing? Um, and if I can like kind of steer my opponent in a direction, that's nice. Where it's like they are going to like this player's here, they're gonna have to take that blitz.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, to kind of pair with the what's my opponent going to blitz question, I like asking what's the most dangerous piece on the field,
mm,
right?
yeah,
That might change turn to turn. Like on a kickoff or something like that, treemen are really, really dangerous. But the threat level for treemen drops off as a drive develops if they get rooted or whatever, right? Like you don't have to worry about them if they're stuck back there. Something like star players, Morg, Bomber, I think it's probably the most. Those are the ones I've had to play against and have had like the worst time against this season. Both of those are really dangerous pieces. Asking yourself, what can I do to get rid of those dangers? What would it take for me to like be confident that I don't have to worry about them for several turns?
mhm,
That type of thing. Another along those lines of like threat threat assessment it would be, do I have a good foul this turn? Now, for the most part, when I play corn. I think I've thrown like four fouls this season. That's just because my guys are better standing and fighting.
mm,
And my team is extremely expensive. And so I'm not going to throw a foul with, except for the like meme purposes, I'm not going to throw a foul with a blood spawn. That doesn't make any sense. But the Marauders on my team are pretty good candidates for it. And uh, what is considered a good foul, I think, is going to change from player to player. But for me, a good foul is like an excellent exchange of economy, right? If I have a 50K piece fouling a 150K piece, that's a pretty good exchange. If I have enough assists to break armor, right? So that's another good question because fouling, like foregoes a lot of board positioning because it takes extra players to set up like a more safe foul. And so if you think you might want to foul, you kind of want to plan out a good chunk of your turn. So that way, especially on offense, you don't want to send like six people into an 8 square area just to get one armor break chance on someone who might be 90K worth of value,
mm,
right? That might not be worth it to every player. I know in this league, there's plenty of players that will throw their fouls. Um, they're because they want to.
mm,
But that doesn't make them good fouls. So
yeah, yeah. I think similar to the fouling thing too. This I guess applies to both sides of the ball, but um, especially more so on offense. Kind of like when you're planning out like a threat assessment is like where can I afford to let my turn end?
yeah,
Because like obviously fouling, if you get caught, that's a turnover. But like doing things in a way where you can be like, okay, if my turn ends here, am I safe? It's like a big thing. So like
yeah, I
making plays to ensure that.
yeah, I think that's like the like one of the most fundamental Blood Bowl questions is during every single thing, what happens if this fails? And like your brain, your lizard brain, when you're throwing two die blocks, you're like, this isn't going to be double skulls, right? But what if it is? What if it's quad skulls, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you can lose games because of the meteor from space falling and hitting a player in the head, right? But uh, the I think the really good Blood Bowl players are doing what they can to minimize those risks, even the extremely unlikely ones. Is that?
Do you have any like defense specific questions here?
Yeah, it's usually like, what do I have to do to get to the ball, right? And in the case of like a cage, usually the right play isn't necessarily, it depends on like strength values and stuff like that. And honestly, I think cages are in many ways overrated. I think they're just kind of safe and people use them quite a bit. But they do take a number of players. And so I usually like a screen a little bit more, or half cages or stuff like that, just depending on what the board state is. Um, uh, but if your opponent is caging up, happens a lot with like orcs. It'll be like three big uns and a blitzer with like a blitzer carrying the ball or something like that. And at that point, you're like, it ain't worth it to try to get in there and get the ball. Usually, you just gotta like wait for something to go wrong with their offensive drive and just kind of stymie them and slow them down, right? Do I have to get the ball is a question
Mhm.
that's worth asking. Like, can I just stall them the whole half? It depends on how bashy their team is, right? And it depends on how rolls are going, right? Sometimes your opponent is just getting it, like they're just rolling dice and they're hurting your players. So that can be a lot of times asking the question like, uh, how good is it if this drive ends right now, right? That's part of the reason why to score, to try to force your opponent to score, you got some KOs and you want some chances for them to get back in the game. Like asking yourself, like, should I keep putting defense up? Is something worth doing. Now, I think you should always put pressure on something on the opponent's team. Like you need to make it hurt if your opponent is trying to stall you as best you can. Um, that way, you get at the most amount of time that you have to try to score back. Um, but like deciding players to try to kill every turn, that goes a long way on defense.
Mm. Yeah.
Which, I mean, like at this point in the season, asking the question, which of my opponent's pieces do I actually want to see in the playoffs? Is a
Mm.
good question to ask, right? Because
Yeah.
if I lose the game, but I kill like a gutter runner that's got like 30 SPP on it, that's a win for somebody in the league, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely feel that. Like I think the biggest thing I've had to shift with uh my kind of play style this season is like on defense is being like where like what is the furthest just knowing the furthest place away. Like if my opponent's like running away, it's kind of getting around. Or just like what if they switch, they try to like
Swap sides of the
swap
field.
sides of the field.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like being able to if they're shifting like that, like doors are not a very agile team. Um so that is just like a scenario that's happened in a couple of games where like you put a lot of pressure on like a cage and then they get like one block to go through and they're able to dodge and run to the other side and just not have enough pressure on them or like you don't get a hit on the ball when they run out and then they just like score the next turn.
Yeah.
um, so that's kind of one of the things that I've had to like focus on, especially in the last couple of weeks, being able to prevent try to be more defensively minded with that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. I think that's probably a good place to wrap up the discussion piece there.
Yeah.
And I guess we can jump on into the playoff picture.
Yeah.
We're not going to do like a full preview of stuff.
Yeah.
We'll probably just kind of talk about like some playoff scenarios and whatnot from here, to kind of try to cover the last 2 weeks of scheduled games.
Yeah, like not every game is going to be as impactful. Like for example, like things like the Rotten Peaches and Halfling Justice. That is one they're just
Yeah.
playing for position.
And this is where our paychecks depend on us mentioning that Wayne random tackle on a halfling,
That's true.
to try to tilt the game in his favor.
Yeah,
Uh,
Tackle Halfling does have the same cadence as Chicken Jockey, which seems timely. So, but yeah, like there's just some games like that that are not going to be as important. So, like if you're looking at the divisions, um, I'm seeing some games that are going to be very important. Examples being like Up Salesman and Might of Asgard. Um, Austin's going to be fighting for that playoff spot. Down his Star Valkyrie uh, has is going to be down an Ulfrinder. So now is it like a significant strength deficit? It wasn't like super great going into it already. Like Black Orcs overall, it was like all that four strength. He lost one of his four strength pieces, so he has an Ulfrinder and a Yeti that can keep up.
yeah,
So
I mean, I would say having played a similar style of this matchup, Corn into Black Orcs, the Bomber was like a nightmare against me. But my Bloodspawn did go sick house. And so the Bloodspawn is like in Austin's case, having something with claws can do some damage against some Black Orcs. Um, and then you still got the Berserkers, right? And John's got to score with goblins, and the Norse Berserker is so good at killing goblins.
yeah, yeah, that's gonna be. I think that's gonna be a big game to watch. Obviously, other thing about the Black Orcs too is they're getting a decent money right now. It's like showing as of right now 240,000. It's a pretty significant. It's like Bomber Plus
Yeah,
something.
bribes.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Um, Other games to watch this week. Obviously, I guess I'll plug my game because I'm sitting at
on the
eighth right
bubble.
now.
Yeah.
I'm playing against the Gray Poxfangs. Um, I would trade like two linemen
Mm.
that are missing this game for the Death Roller. Uh, good. Yeah. So it's gonna be interesting to see how that goes. I'm probably gonna have to like hire a lineman for this game because where I don't want to be is down players against a team that's gonna be faster.
Yeah.
So
You need to be able to, you need all 11 people on the pitch
yeah,
because you have to be able to afford putting players in positions that are preemptive,
yeah,
right? You can't just have uh like six dwarves on the field and expect to win against Skaven. You don't have enough movement at that point. You'll just run circles around your whole team.
mhm, yep. Another player who's looking slightly bubble-ish right now. Johnny Waters Return to Monkey, like Clay. He's in that. He's halfway through the Murderer's Row.
Yeah.
Uh, but
I think Clay's safe, right? He's
it's
safe-ish.
safe-ish. Yeah.
Safe-ish. I think he needs a draw somewhere in here.
Yeah, I think a draw would.
A draw, I think, and he's like in the clear.
Yes.
And I think he needs a win, and he's good, right?
Yeah, a win gets him in. A win locks him. A draw, I think, should be good.
I think so. Ide is locked in now, right?
I just locked, yes.
Yeah. So Sean, Wayne, Jennings, Ide, and Urigan are all locked in.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's your five right there, and then they're gonna fight each other for position moving forward, right?
Yeah, we've got like six people fighting for those last three slots, so
Yeah.
that's gonna lead to some interesting moments in these next couple games. Um, then also one part is like Chris playing against Steel Terror. That's probably going to be a win. So that's going to put him in a spot where now he's at 15. He's going to be looking to like lock up there.
He has to
As
fight Sean in the very last week, though.
yes,
So he has to fight the ultimate boss. It's basically a playoff game, right?
yes,
Number one can play gatekeeper there, can just keep him out of the top eight. But I actually don't hate Chris's team into Sean's because of the amount of damage that Chris's team has taken in the season and has not slowed down at all. Right.
Yeah. There's a looking at it from the Snake Eyes division, you've got more of an insider vibe on this. Which games are you like looking out for, especially this week?
Yeah, so the kind of like the other division, it's not really like set in stone who's going to be the top of the division. I the my loss to Coop certainly hurts. Um, Jim is always lurking in the wings, always waiting, always scheming to try to get first place. And so uh, he has a cross divisional game, and I think one other. Um, he is playing. He's got to play Jeremy, right? Um,
Yeah.
so my suspicion is that he probably handles his business against Jeremy. He's got to play against Mike Morales.
Yes.
And so Morales is in I have to win out mode to have a chance. Um, and so I guess that means Chase up is locked in, right?
Should
I think
be.
so. Yeah, right. So 19 points looks to be the cutoff. That won't
Yeah.
necessarily be true, but
Yeah.
I think at this point it might be 19 points.
Yeah. Yeah. It's looking like the top five from each division are pretty secure.
Yeah,
So,
I mean there's a 3 point difference between fourth place and ninth place, so that's like um that's like one win. So I play Ness next. Um, if I if I if Ness beats me,
mm,
then he will jump up to 19 points and he'll be in the mix. And then I have to play Henderson in the last week. And so mine and Henderson is like jockeying for position in the top cuts there.
yeah.
Um, you know, like playing at this point, like if you're in the top three, you'll be playing one of the people who were scrapping to get in at the last little bit, right? So I would much rather somebody who scraped in play against somebody who scraped into the top eight as opposed to somebody who's been in the other division's top eight the whole time. So,
Yeah. Yeah. There could be some like kind of odd scenarios I could see playing out. Like, for example, Chase is playing one this week.
yeah,
They're both at 19 points. If if a bunch of people below them win, Juan's last game is against Morales.
right, yeah,
So that could be a scenario where, if they both end on 19 points, if they're the only two that end on 19 points, then that's like a point where Morales like to jump tiebreaker wise.
yeah,
So that could lead to some interesting scenarios. Like if 19 points is going to be the cutoff for this division, like you got some people in there that can do some things.
yeah,
Like there could be a lot, there could be a huge cutoff of 19 where it's like, I could see Will's last game, Great Tree Good Blaze. He's got Nate's week 13 and Coop this week. So, like, if he splits those, that's 19 points. So there could be just a giant group of
yes,
people
yeah,
at 19, and
yeah,
then we're looking next week at trying to draw red lines on a board
right,
to see who's making it in.
yeah. We got all kinds of stuff that could happen from here. Yeah, the Ness and who play the last week, and that could be a playoff game, essentially.
Mhm.
One of them wins and gets in, and the other one loses, is stuck outside. So,
Yeah. And interdivision this week matters. Obviously, this is probably going to be an elimination game for Mike. If
yeah.
he can get the win over,
I don't hate Mike's chances here. I think he's got to play some of the best football he's played. Uh, his team is just constantly he's basically scrapping together a team before every single game.
yeah,
He's having to do whatever he can just to be in the game. He pulled off some pretty good wins earlier in the season, and then cooled off this last few weeks. I think he's got a shot in this game. but it's possible those big guys just pound his team into dust. So
Yeah, I think that's the scary thing is like outside of the big guys, like the team is not too killy, so that'll probably help a
it's
little
just a
bit.
bunch of human linemen, right?
Yeah, but he does have the Dark Elf, which is back this game, so that will be a factor.
Yeah.
Um, he does have the Dark Elf doesn't match up, the best against like the War Dancer. Like that's like I think I'd rather have the War Dancer in that scenario. So that's
War
he's got that
Answer's
going for him.
War Answer's faster and has more skills,
Yeah,
right? Strip ball matters, right? Because the Dark Elf doesn't have any strip ball protection. And also one of the War Dancers, like one War Dancer has got strip ball, the other War Dancer is tackle frenzy.
yeah,
So both of those match up really well into the Dark Elf.
yeah.
So I think Mike even random wrestle on the tree, which is just really funny.
It did. Yes,
Yeah, that's just funny.
that is pretty funny. I think so.
You can use it to break the root.
Mhm.
So funny enough.
Yeah. Okay. So, any games that you're like looking at this week that we didn't talk about?
Um, let's see. I don't think I've got anything else to add as far as games go. I mean, I think as far as like what's probably going to be the best game of the week, I suspect the Rotten Peaches Halfling Justice game is an all timer.
Yeah.
Both both of those coaches, they want so badly to win that game, and I think they're going to just it. I would love to see like another 12 casualty game here, where both teams just kind of like smash right into the other. Um, so, yeah,
Also, just to make sure that we mentioned it, tackle halfling.
there was a tackle halfling. Yeah, yeah, we got to cover our bases there.
If the tackle halfling gets a casualty in this game,
Yeah,
then it's going to be a true all-timer. Like uphill tackle actually mattering against a jaguar
yeah.
would be the kind of thing I'd want to like breathe into the universe. I guess. I think
All right,
that's
that does it right there for us. I think
yeah.
we've got some pressure washing going on outside, so we gotta escape this podcast with our sanity intact.
Yeah, the building is feeling almost as much pressure as some of these teams at the bottom of each division. So,
Heyo.
call that a segue for the century. Yeah. So, like, yeah, this week was a little bit different than our previous ones. Next week will also be a little bit different, I'm sure.
Yeah, and then the playoffs start.
Yeah, we'll have to do like a special playoff preview show.
Yeah.
Unless someone immediately plays their game, they'll probably blow up our whole spot. Yeah. Appreciate y'all listening. If wherever you're listening to this, drop us a like and follow. It's great talking to y'all each week. And we will see you next week for some more playoff talk.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.